So, once we finish the debate about whether it's better to figure out or whether it's easier to figure out the greatest good or happiness for the largest number of people by having a set of rules that supposedly do that, or by each individual at each individual choice trying to figure out in their own life whether that's going to happen, once we move on from there, we come to the ethic or the normative ethic of caring. Part of a social situation, interconnected with other individuals, you should act caringly towards others. You should be understanding of where they're coming from. You should, in that social situation context, it's incredibly important that everybody feels heard, everybody feels noticed, everybody feels cared about, everybody feels loved, and yet at the same time, and that those ethical concerns, they outweigh other things. One of the big ways that you see this sort of brought out is the idea that people are not going to listen to or be able to care about their ethical choices until they feel safe, and in a place where they can emotionally express the reality of how they feel and feel like they are cared for enough that they matter. The idea being that as long as we are in a defensive stance, as long as we are, watching out and waiting and worrying about what's going to happen to us, that it's very difficult for us to consider the feelings, emotions, and even the good of other people because we're in this self-defense mode. Another option for normative ethics is the idea of rights. Rights are established by society, they're protected. Rights are the highest priority, that my rights are what really matters and your rights are what really matters. But we all know that that's really my rights, because that's human beings are selfish. We're just like that. So that question of how do you that ethics is based in this concept of balancing different people's rights, and how do you balance the different rights that different people have based on what their society says they have a right to do. Here in the US, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that supposedly everybody has the right to do those things. But if I'm pursuing my happiness and somebody else is pursuing their happiness, there's a good chance that we're going to come in opposition to one another, because maybe my happiness involves something that they want for their happiness. Maybe we both are in love with the same person. We're both pursuing that happiness, and maybe they're actually pursuing happiness by being in love with somebody else. Our various right to pursue happiness is interfered with by the fact that the other people are also pursuing happiness. And how do you balance? So we balance our rights and the rights of different individuals. The fifth of these sort of schools of normative ethics, and these aren't the only ones by any means, is virtue ethics. The idea that a person should be judged by their overall character rather than any one specific action. So maybe they do this one thing that was really terrible. Maybe do these two or three things that were really terrible, but how do they act day to day? How do they react with other individuals? How do they interact with people closest to them? And the classic virtues of being calm, of being just, of being of fulfilling your obligations and duties, the virtues of seeking to be a noble and virtuous person, and the concept of working on your character so that you continually make decisions that are more and more beneficial to the universe, so to speak. So we've got our virtue ethics, our ethics that deal with the question of the interrelationship of people's rights. We have the ethics of caring, the ethics of utilitarianism, and the ethics of deontology, or our obligations and duties. Now, in terms of this, what we are going to do is I want you guys to describe each school of ethical thought in terms of how they would approach the IB examination room dilemma. And this is what I want you to be ready to talk to me about on Thursday, is that be ready to talk about the approaches of deontology, utilitarianism, caring, rights, and virtues. Have something sort of written up, some notes written up for yourself about each one of these five in terms of this question of seeing somebody, me or another teacher, seeing someone cheating on their IB examination, and what we ought to do according to deontology, what we ought to do according to utilitarianism, and so on.